Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, specifically good morning because we're all still waking up. We hope you've got your coffee, got your snacks, and like a true school student, a true university student, as I once was, got myself a Monster. Whilst wearing a Red Bull athlete's top, which is kind of counterintuitive. Anywho, welcome to Scale School, episode 2 of season 3. But season 2 lasted for like 2 episodes. So we're on season 3 technically. New format, new vibes. New format, same vibes. And today we're going to be talking about x402 and our lovely guests and their project HTT Payer. So, before we jump into things, let's do a quick little round of intros. I'm sure you all know me. You see me realistically every single day at this point, yapping into your ears. I am Falcor, your head of community here at Scale Network. To my diagonally right, we have our VP of Developer Success, which isn't actually his role, Mr. Great Axios.
It's not actually my role. We'll have to hear more about that later. It's news to me.
I thought Developer Success wasn't a thing.
No, that's literally the name of my team.
Oh, Devrel. Sorry. Devrel was the one that's not real.
That is bucketed under this team. We do many things. We wear many hats. We like a lot of hats.
The Web3 way.
Let me switch for you just to prove my point. Here you go. See, we wear many hats. I've got them lined up next to me, depending on what role I need to wear. Need to be in a call.
Love it. How you doing, Sawyer?
I'm doing well. I am feeling very excited. I have been tinkering the last 48 hours on some really fun things, which I want to share and talk about today during this, all focused on x402. And I'm just having a blast learning new things and collaborating with people very interested in the same things I am, which is agentic payments. So yeah, I'm fired up. Having a good day.
Hell yeah. And then with us as well is the team from HTT Payer. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start off with Mr. Carlos to my right. Why don't you give the people a little introduction about yourself?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Here, Carlos Josue. I am the co-founder and CEO of HTT Payer. I'm very grateful to be here. Let's just talk a little bit about agentic payments, AI, Web3, and more things.
And above me, Brandon, right? Did I get that right?
Yep, exactly. That's correct. I'm happy to be here. My name is Brandon, co-founder of HTT Payer. Outside of that, professionally, I've also worked in a lot of data analytics, most recently as a lead data analyst at Our Network, which is a crypto newsletter, publishes on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Outside of that, I've also won a few hackathons as well as research competitions hosted by Uniswap as well as Superchain. Just to say that I'm super involved in the space and super excited about where the industry is going.
Incredible. Obviously x402 has been top of mind for us and a lot of people over the past couple of weeks, month or so. Very, very exciting new technology, and lots of new innovations are coming into the space. Sawyer, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much. It's kind of like very. I wanna say it's very. Feels very almost like early DeFi vibes in terms of like growth and interest right now. It's just every day there's new people building, trying things. We obviously also have, in this case, the blessing of a number of, larger corporations and enterprises, the likes of Coinbase, Google, Anthropic, Vercel, I'm missing so many. I mean, there's literally so many
Cloudflare,
thank you.
Coinbase.
I already said them.
Oh,
You get the gist though, right? Like there's so many people involved, and I think right we're seeing this. We kind of saw like the rise of X402. I think I want to say obviously it's been out now for around 6 months. The V2 proposal is live in GitHub. Big shout out to Eric and the team there. Incredible work. And I think in the last like 3 weeks, we went from like not really a thing to like it's a thing, right? And then I think last week, I want to say the same thing started happening with ERC 8004, which is the agent-to-agent kind of EIP introduced by a combination of people from the Ethereum Foundation, Coinbase, Google, and I'm also missing someone there. I apologize for whoever I forgot. There's one more person. But now we're really seeing this drive toward like verifiable agent compute, which I think is really great because that entire thing relies on X402 primarily, at least right now, for moving compute and payments on chain, which I think is really exciting. So there's, like I said, there's 10,000 things happening. I could literally stand here for 60 minutes and just talk about literally who's doing what, but I won't. I think the exciting part is we have these standards and we're really seeing teams adopt those standards early, right? And I think that has allowed us to really expedite the growth and adoption, not just with, obviously like, smaller teams just getting started, like the HTT Payer team here with us today. But we do have, larger teams and enterprises looking to adopt this and push this forward as well, which is really exciting. So I just think those two pieces kind of all pushing forward on that open protocol is really exciting. Before I hand it back to you, just a quick reminder for everybody, two things. One, if you have not heard of SKALE, SKALE is a network of blockchains. It is the only natively EVM horizontally scaling automated blockchain network in the world. A lot of buzzwords in there for you, Ben.
that was honestly like, you finish a university essay and you're off by like a couple hundred words, and you're like, oh, I just need to start adding in like these words to just make it sound.
It's a network of many blockchains with zero gas fees. It's freaking
there.
Cool.
It is.
All right. On top of that, if you have not heard of X402, stable coins, all that, I will dive deeper, but very high level. X402 is an internet native payments protocol that is designed by default to allow stable coins to be used for instant settlement payments using the native HTTP status code in your browser. If you don't know what a native HTTP status code is, go in your browser, go to scale.space, and then go to the dev tool inspect thing if you right click and go to inspect and go to the network tab, and you'll actually see like a 200 scale.space. That's an HTTP status code. That means success. 402 just means payment required. Why is payment required? Because it's a payment protocol. That's your intro to X402 today.
We should set like a test one up.
I did that earlier this morning. It just broke. Yeah, it was sad, but I have a bunch of them. And that is basically what we're here to talk about today. And I will gladly put some more examples together. Maybe we'll do a bigger demo next week on them.
Bigger demo. And, one of those, X402 requires payment. How are you going to do the payment?
On SKALE?
No, sorry. How's the method you're going to do the payment?
What do you mean?
I'm just trying to segue over to HTTP Pay here.
I guess that's a very valid point. Although I want to say like, and maybe I just misunderstood this. I think the reason that I didn't click on that is with the new tool you guys launched. I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'll let you guys talk about it. It's less about making the payment, and it's more about abstracting the resource access. If I kind of understood that, I may be saying that wrong though. So I'll hand it over to you guys for you to actually introduce your product properly, because I'm butchering it. So yeah, what's your product? Please deep dive into it. Why are you building it? What are you building? Let's chat.
Of course. Carlos, I'm not sure if you wanted to start.
Yeah, of course. So basically HTTP Payer is a protocol. We are building a whole suite of tools on top of X402, and basically it's a server framework that allows you to use SDKs, CLI agents for 402 codes HTTP. So specifically, it handles x402 payments instructions on behalf of the client and the user. So that means that is not really abstract. The resources. It allows you to make it straightforward the payments and help you to not really use all the complexity that has X402. So what we does is to basically standardize and put more easily to clients or users to be able to make payments through HTTP Payer to those HTTP 402 codes. And just straightforward, what we does is to basically grab X402 and basically provides this for not only agents but also for Web 2 and Web 3 applications. That said, branding, I know you can explain more about the infrastructure behind.
Yeah, I think the best way to think of it is, middleware. Essentially, want to make X402 use as easy as any regular API call. If any developers are familiar with curl, Python library requests, and every language has their own library to help handle API calls. So we're essentially making it as easy as calling any Web 2 endpoint, because what we notice is X402 is a great it's a great, I would say it's a great start. It's a great foundation layer as well. But being in the space for several years, you've kind of realized that maybe some Web 2 developers and less technical users may be turned off by private key management. That does add a lot of security risk as well. So I immediately saw the SDK released, but you still needed your private key. I was thinking, okay, well, most Web 2 developers, unless there's really a compelling reason to, they may be turned off by that. So came up with HTTP Payer, a way to abstract that away. Starting with using like an API key for auth, but moving to stronger authentication methods as well. But really a way to handhold Web 2 developers and transition them from Web 2 into Web 3 without them really even noticing it. So all payments are made in stable coins. It's a fully X402 compliant proxy server, just that the end user, it looks like a regular API call to them.
Amazing. I love that. I think I want to pull a few things out there that I think are really important. I think so for those of you that are not familiar, curl is really interesting. Curl is probably one of those things that's been around for way longer than I've been alive, and I have no idea how old it actually is. But it's one of those things that me as a developer, I use it all the time, but I don't actually know how to use it, right? Like, and I think a lot of developers are like that. You probably I think everyone just like copies curl commands from the internet and just prays that they don't get hacked. I'm probably one of those people. But what's really interesting is if you need to, if you are a developer, you're a learning developer, or you're just a normal person, go on your computer, type in terminal, and then type curl space https ://scale.space, and you'll see it pull back the Scale website. So curl is a command line tool to fetch data. And so I think comparing this to curl, or like explaining that as like this is like a way to kind of bring people on board like that, I think is fantastic, because I do think that is one of the things I've noticed with X402 and building agentic tools so far is it's really complicated. It's like really simple, but also really complicated, right? Like it's all there, but then you want to start to do things and you have to patch all this stuff together. And then most of this stuff doesn't work with like your standard. Like if I want to do agentic coding with Cursor, most of these tools don't work with Cursor unless I want to hard code a private key into the MCP config, which is, I'm not going to do that. That just seems dumb to me. And then there's a lot on the security side that I think is really interesting here. I think the other side that's really cool is how you guys are building the enforceable rule set, right? Like I think having the spending limits and all that is really, really smart. It's something I've been giving a lot of thought to, and I've been actually thinking a lot more on the MCP side. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But one of the interesting parts about a lot of this is you as a user, right? Or whether you're using, you want to use this to get the news, or you want to do this to do something and generate something. These are both actions that you're functionally willing to pay for, right? You pay for these things already, right? Like, most people at this point, I feel like, are paying for Twitter Premium. That's like $85 a year, right? You're already paying for access to better news. Because if you don't pay for it, then it hides a whole bunch of stuff from you. Same thing with if you want the actual like newspaper, right? You pay for that service. If you want to watch cable on TV, like 9 out of 10 people pay for the news. I personally do not. I have like Samsung TV free thing, and the news is terrible, so I don't watch the news, and that's probably why. But anyways, so what I think is really interesting about this, right, is I've thought a lot about the onboarding flow for a user to consume this, right? And I think what's really interesting, and I love where you guys are going, is you're focusing what feels like less so on the agents and more so on the humans, right? This is functionally a human-facing tool. So I think that's really important to call out for everybody, because if you actually read the X402 white paper, it's talking about a lot about agents, right? Agentic automation, agentic compute, agentic finance. I think there is absolutely a future for that. I think the world is going to wind up looking in some way, shape, or form Star Warsy or cyberpunky or some combination like that in the coming years, because like, why wouldn't we? We're humans. We like to put robots on things. But I think that what's really cool about this is it falls more into this bucket of what I call enhancement. So I'm sure someone else has already coined these terms, and I just haven't found them yet through my reading. But we see all this LLM stuff, all this AI stuff, all this agentic stuff focused on generation, right? Like, let's go generate an image, let's generate a video, let's generate a blog, let's generate a tweet. And then we have enhancement. And enhancement, I think, is used way less today. Enhancement is like, I wrote this, can you proof it? Can you fix it? Can you make sure it's okay? Enhancement is, hey, can you get me the news? Because I'm too lazy to get the news, and I'd rather just pay you a penny to get me the news, right? And that's totally okay. And so I think there's these like two very different paths. And I think humans benefit way more right now from enhancement. I'd love your guys' thoughts on this, but I have this big belief that that is where we will see a significant amount of AI efforts that actually succeed, knowing how many startups and companies have come in and tried to build automated AI so far, and that have ultimately crashed and burned because like it's really hard. It takes so much money and so much resource and so many smart people. It's really hard, but starting to tweak little things in life, starting to enhance it bit by bit is a lot more feasible and attainable because you can actually self-test it, right? And you can prove that it works. And so would love your guys' thoughts on if that is kind of where you're thinking about this going, maybe more so for developers or humans or whatever it may be. But yeah, would love your guys' thoughts and Ben's as well.
Yeah, awesome. So my thoughts on this is, yeah, I agree on that the human side is very important. Like, we don't need to have that separated from the AI agents, but also at the same time, for example, our tool or infrastructure that the protocol that we are making is that allows you to make both. So it's easy for the human and it's easy for the AI agent as well. So yeah, we can basically think about this as a great initial layer for everybody. But yeah, I think that in the future we are going to have this agent to agent payments very soon. Like, we are seeing this in these days, and also I think that the enhancement is a very straightforward use case, and I agree that it's not very used often. But yeah, like, for example, I, instead of generate all the content, I prefer to enhance my own thoughts when I'm creating some kind of issue or some kind of notes. So yeah, I prefer that way because I think it's the best usability that you can have with AI generation, because also you can check your grammar and spelling. So I think that's the future. Yes.
Yeah, I'll even chime in on that. We've been focusing on the SDK and then a CLI agent as well. So I've been testing that CLI agent pretty intensely for the past week or so, and it's really kind of evolved into a X402 exploration tool. And I say that to say that I've essentially been incorporating the CLI agent into some of my workflows. I think the theme of enhancement, especially using it as a research assistant, where I'm able to easily get premium data from a variety of X402 gated endpoints, and then pipe that into Notion, Drive. I've especially been essentially collecting the responses from the agent and uploading it to ChatGPT to enhance any responses, any deep research that ChatGPT may be able to do. And then also just to say, there's definitely going to be a place for users when you think about users in X402, but our tool ultimately enables both users as well as purely agents to interact as well.
Interesting. So, a question for you guys, if I may. I have struggled personally with making MCP servers useful in an automated fashion. And what I mean by that is obviously X402 is designed around not actually MCP directly, but it's more so designed around really like any web service. And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing right now, right? Is like probably the biggest use case we're seeing X402 be used for today is paying per inference, right? So like I want to ask GPT, I want to ask Claude, I want to ask one of these 10 million models. Everybody and their friend is, creating like a open router competitor and putting X402 in front and making it pay per inference. And I think that's great. But there's all the general purpose models, right? They all have their pros and cons, but I've been trying to experiment and influence the output, right, with different MCP servers, and I'm having a really difficult time actually getting value out of that. And so a question for you guys is, how do you see enhancement of potentially, how do you see enhancement of agents with letting, third-party people register, more like injective-based resources, aka like an MCP, right? So, for example, I'm running, I've got a machine that's running an LLM on it, right? It's running an agent, right? The agent behind the scenes is using, call it, Claude Sonnet 4, and I want to use potentially XYZ MCP server to inject a tool or make something available to this agent. Can I use HTT Payer to call my agent, and as it's communicating with the agent, it can use HTT Payer to pull in the necessary MCP servers? Or is that out of scope and not really where you guys are thinking?
So yeah, I'll say the current iteration of the project has really been honed in and focused on just abstracting away that payer, that payment layer. So essentially, we want to enable really any piece of software to just plug into the HTTP Payer middleware, and abstract that away, and then let the user, let the script handle the rest of the downstream processes. So at this point in time, we don't have that sort of functionality implemented at this point, because again, we're focusing and honing in on that abstracting away the payment and really solidifying the payment router experience. But with that said, I've been exploring, thinking about MCP more or less wrapper for HTTP Payer that would enable agents to really easily interact with the agent and pay resources as they need to.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
Following what Brandon said, is our focus right now is basically deliver this payment layer for for all purposes. But in our focus in the future is to be able to have the right tools for developers and people in general to be able to connect their platform or tools, let's say different agents for different purposes. So that's what we see in the future, and but for now we are focusing on more on the payment layer.
Got it. Makes sense. Makes sense. I really like that idea. I don't know how the security works. This is something I've been thinking a lot about. I really like the idea of being able to run that and connect it back to like the local agent, right? Like can Cursor, can Copilot, can, whatever, call HTTP payer automatically, as part of the running process. And I think that's really interesting. I do think there's a big question around when we get there of security in general. Like I said, I think you guys saw this, right? Like everyone's just kind of pasting private keys around, and it's not really we all know that ends badly, right? The one
Wait,
day
I
you download the wrong
I
package.
shouldn't be giving away my private key.
Only to me. Just kidding. Don't give away your private keys. Hide those things.
I've given you my private key before, haven't I? Yeah,
No.
a couple times.
No, you have not. If you did, I would yell at you.
Not my real one. I've given you a private key before, when we were doing some stuff.
Some tinkering.
Yeah,
that's fair. All right, so I'm going to pause there because I could go on forever with random questions. Ben, back to you. How, we've talked a lot of x402 here. Where else should we be focusing? What else are you seeing as the non-technical person here that can kind of guide us in where is this going and what should we be thinking about?
I think obviously, I think peer-to-peer marketplace, like agent-to-agent marketplaces are going to be interesting to see. Like if you had, for example, imagine you had a model that was a perfection of what you want, right? Let's just say hypothetically. Let's say I built a model that was the perfect marketing social media manager, right? But it's a very, very condensed, almost SLM model, right? That's been its parameters have been so fine-tuned that it is perfect, but it needs access to these alternative models and applications like Sora or ChatGPT or something like that. I think what we could see is fine-tuned models that are, because we all deal with hallucinations, and Sawyer, to your point, kind of models that, it's impossible to get the same results from. Now, we could do something like that, right? So your model is picture perfect of what you want, and then its additional capabilities, it uses something like x402 to go and run through these additional models, right? Like Sora, go through all the Hugging Face and everything. I think that one could be interesting.
Definitely. I feel like for that, right? And I think this is where arguably this is where the trustless agent EIP, that ERC 8004 probably comes into play. Is I think the biggest question that a lot of people have asked, and I have some call outs that I can name some people who are actually building some stuff in this area. But I think there's a big question around how do we let people supply this compute, and how do we validate that the compute has been legitimately served, right? And then ultimately we have the payment that needs to process in between. And what I mean by that is, let's say, Ben, you've got this really incredible agent, right? Could be a tool, could be an agent, could be just a pure API call, really doesn't matter, but you've got something you're selling and you're a legitimate actor, right? But the question is, how do I know you're a legitimate actor? And better yet, how does my agent know that you're a legitimate actor when it wants to go and request that you fine-tune my tweet, right? And I think that's where this new EIP is going to be really exciting as it really gets built out further. Is it brings identity, reputation, and validation on chain, right? And so what that means is we can start to have validity behind the agent-to-agent requests, right? So now I'm running some agent, or I'm using HTTP payer, and I say, hey, please improve this tweet. It sends out that request, which goes to the marketplace, right? And finds that you're the #1 ranked person by reputation for improving tweets, sends my information, you manipulate it, sends back that response, right? I've paid with x402 behind the scenes. And all of that is validated that, you're not going to send me back malicious payloads. You're doing the work for the payment, all that good stuff. And so I think that is a huge part of it, is like, how do we do that? And I also think, that's probably my good segue for the day of why scale, right? Like at the end of the day, this is scale school. So I have to do my one shill for scale. Otherwise I will be in trouble. And I think this is something I've been thinking about a lot, is as people start to talk about this, it always comes back to me as like, someone's got to pay for this compute, right? It's even the same thing with x402 itself, right? Like whoever's running the facilitator is covering the cost of the compute. Coinbase is subsidizing 99.9% of the transactions right now because A, it's happening on their chain, and B, it's in USDC, which they get paid for. I'm not judging them. It's a great business model for them, right? Prioritize USDC, make more money, everyone's happy. But it doesn't actually work in my eyes as we start to get out into blockchains that do have gas fees, especially with like, everyone saw the Friday volatility. At least if you weren't living under a rock, you were probably freaking out for
it went up to $300 for a transaction.
Yeah, exactly. I was getting messages left and right from people freaking out, like, what's going on? Why is the world ending again? What's happening? And at the end of the day, obviously the market is the market. We're not going to comment on that. But the important part is gas fees on L1 spiked to hundreds of dollars, and gas fees on L2 spiked to many pennies or dozens of cents. And you can't bake that into an agentic budget, especially if you're trying to do sub-penny payments, right? Like if my agent is doing, like right now, everyone's using a penny as the default, which is fine. But like, let's be honest here. If I have a fleet of agents running, I'm not paying a penny per request. I'm paying like 1,000th of a penny per request, right? Like I'm paying a fraction of a fraction because I'm probably making thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of requests per day. These things are just like fleets on autopilot, right? Like that's the goal everyone wants to get to. The problem is you do that on chain, you add the on-chain registries. Now all of a sudden gas fees are nonstop spiking back up. And so my scale show of the day is I think that you're going to have multiple chains that are just scale chains running agent registries. And I believe that scale is going to be the primary home of ERC 8004 deployments and usage at some point, because of the fact that the more adoption you see, the more gas fees go up. The more gas fees go up, the more everybody actually starts to say, well, is this feasible? The more they say that, the more they realize that scale's been here the whole time and it's just sitting here waiting for them. So yeah, I made a bunch of groups with 8004 people, so already trying to make it happen, but we've got some exciting stuff coming to the Scaleverse shortly on this. And I think this is probably going to be a big part of it, just because, again, like, I don't know, I would love your guys' opinion, but to me, I just don't see this happening on Ethereum. I don't even really see this happening on, I don't see Base subsidizing ERC 8004 usage in perpetuity. I just don't think it brings them infinite amount of value if it winds up clogging the chain for everybody else.
Yeah, I haven't done as much research into the new standard as you have, but I will say, just understanding, that the facilitators are essentially covering that cost. Essentially, you can sign the message, and we're able to abstract that initial gas fee away, but at the end of the day, someone is going to have to pay it, and Base has been subsidizing through their facilitator. So yeah, you just need to think about more sustainable models. Would it be subscribing to a facilitator or running your own facilitator? Once you get there, you're essentially already paying for the gas fees as well. But I am familiar with Scale's architecture. Regarding the gas fee transfers and transactions. So I'm already seeing how it fits together, how it all comes together.
For sure. I mean, I guess a question for you guys, right? Because right now, my understanding is you guys are using a third-party facilitator. Is that correct, or are you running in-house?
So for the maybe provide a little more background. So HTTP Payer was essentially a hackathon project for the 2025 Chainlink Chromium Hackathon. It won for the cross-chain solutions track. And what we did is, we deployed it on Base as well as on Avalanche. So we didn't see any publicly accessible Avalanche facilitator. So we did deploy an Avalanche facilitator in addition to everything else within the HTTP Payer framework.
Amazing, amazing. So I guess a question for you guys, right? And you can absolutely say no. There will be zero hard feelings, but just want to understand, right? Because I think this helps people that are listening and thinking about building. I think it helps them understand these decisions because they become almost more like product and business decision than tech decision. Let's assume that you guys have 10,000 customers actively sending requests through HTTP Payer, right? My question is, you have to choose, okay, we want people to get paid in more than just USDC, right? They want to get paid in USDT, they want to get paid in USDG, USDP, Pi USD, AUSD, whatever, right? There's going to be a billion stable coins in the world. Base is not subsidizing anything but USDC. They're only subsidizing functional USDC right now. So the question is, you guys have to take that hit, right? Or find someone to take that hit for you on Base or on Avalanche or on any of these other chains that can have these variable gas fees. Do you guys see as part of your business, do you see it potentially making sense at some point in the future to say, yes, Scale makes sense to prioritize as our primary chain to have those invisible payments occur on that you're already abstracting because of the fact that there is no settlement and you can run facilitators forever and never have to pay that fee, right? So if your facilitator costs you $20 a month, but your facilitator is landing 100 grand of rev on chain and you're profiting 1 to 2%, you're, far in the green, don't have to worry about those variable fees. Is that something for you guys that you could say, yes, that makes sense with kind of our invisible abstracted experience? And yes, you can absolutely say no.
Well, I'll just chime in then to say HTTP Payer is multi-chain at heart, really. So we want to expand as x402 does, and
Of course.
my personal thesis is that I think it's just going to make the most sense for all chains to coalesce to x402 as a more or less like base layer for blockchains. And x402 can, in a sense, abstract which blockchain you're using exactly. And I think that is a huge benefit, especially if we were to, incorporate something like SKALE, because like I mentioned, we aren't tied to one chain in particular, and obviously, the chain that has the best UI UX as well as makes the most sense from a business point of view is something that we'd be open to exploring, and I think we already have. Not sure if Carlos wants to chime in on that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Branding. I think business-wise, it's better to have this multi-chain solution, chain agnostic, I can say, and we can basically decide really which one it's better for us and for the people in general that are using the platform and the protocol. So yeah, I think that we can think about it and we can start building on SKALE as well. So I don't see any issues on that. And again, I want to mention that I think not it's USDC is not going to be the only stable coin using on x402. So absolutely, yeah.
Right, and I think that's really the question, right? Because I think to the Coinbase and Base teams benefit, right? And it's a benefit to them, but it's also a benefit to the industry because they're making it easy to adopt, right? I think the question that I have is, will that hinder adoption at a stage because people are only using Base? And there's really, there's other stable coins on Base, but it's like 90+% USDC, or at least that's what's actively liquid and being used. And so I think that's the big question, right? And I agree regarding the multi-chain, right? I think for me, a lot of this is from the UI UX perspective, you want what's best for the user, right? So we want to hide as much of this as we can from the user. If they have funds existing on chain A or chain B, we want to abstract that. The question is, how can we let them execute no matter where they are, right? And so I think a good example is, because you have zero gas fees, you can functionally do far more complex logic on chain, right? So a good example is we have Sushi Swap on our Europa hub, right? Sushi Swap is Uni v2 and v3 compatible, at least on our Scale Europa hub. And so what this means is you can do swaps. So now if we actually look at settling a facilitated transaction, one thing we could do is swap on the fly, right? Because there's zero gas fees. So there is no additional 300K or 200K cost, or 150K, whatever it is, to the facilitator for that swap. Now we also have layer 0. So what that means is functionally what you could do, right, is you could have, call it a smart contract that lives on Avalanche, right? And what happens is as people are signing the authorization, you have a smart contract that's actually sitting in front of the token that is taking and allowing batch authorizations to be pushed in, taking all those as one and sending a batch bridge to Scale, which on execution swaps and does whatever, right? So functionally what we could abstract and hide from the user is saying, hey, you're on Avalanche, you can pay in any of these 10 tokens, right? You could pay in USDC, USDT, WBTC, wrapped ETH, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You pay your authorization. We may charge you, we meaning you guys, may charge you a premium on the spread to cover any potential slippage to ensure the seller actually gets their full payout. You could take 1,000 authorizations or 500 authorizations or 100, whatever it is, send them all at once, right? So it's almost like delayed settlement because like if you're fronting 100 settlements, it's like $1, right? So you front the $1 to the sellers, you've got the $1. You press that into the contract on Avalanche. It sends that message via layer 0, delivers to Scale in a couple of seconds, swaps all those tokens on Sushi Swap, costs $0 to do that, settles out to all the sellers in a single batch. So like, I think that's where things get really cool, right? Is we can actually make it where you can use any chain, but as you start to bring in more complex logic, you actually settle that all in one place because you can do that in a way where it doesn't cost the facilitator more money, which means you don't have to pass that cost down the stack back toward the consumer, aka the buyer.
Yeah, I would say that makes a lot of sense, and I've maybe somewhat been thinking in the same same things. Because I'm a U.S. citizen, but Carlos and I were actually based in Panama, building out of Panama. And yeah, a lot of X402 has been USDC, USD stablecoins, but for non-US entities, non-US developers, a USD stablecoin may not make as much sense. So having that sort of a feature essentially implemented is going to, I think it's going to help reduce the maybe concentration risk on base and USDC. I was even thinking some sort of like FX module as a proxy, via stable coins. Let's say the endpoint requires USDC, but you only have stablecoin Mexican peso, essentially some sort of proxy that would handle that swap and exactly could, use the same sort of architecture that you just explained.
Exactly. And it is beneficial. I think, we have this thing labeled finance, payments, and X402. We spent the majority on X402. I think looking more broadly into the finance and payments, I think that's where you have, the majority of your stablecoin. Yes, Ben.
Well, I'm just thinking, right? Are we not going to come to a world where we're going to get money converters in crypto?
Yes. No, we 1,000% are. I mean, functionally, you already have that. The thing is that you have to this gets very.
Yeah, but I mean, like, because I was thinking, right? Because like, obviously, the euro has released a stablecoin or is releasing a stablecoin. I can't remember. And the euro to USD.
There's a bunch of them.
Yeah,
there's a bunch of stablecoins. The key is the question is adoption and why people hold them, right? And there's also a question of where people use them. Like, so I think there's this misconception, which this is not an offense or shot taken at Circle in any way. Tether is gold standard. That is reality, right? And I'm not saying gold standard from a reserve backing. I'm not commenting on that or on whether any of the entities are good or bad. Tether is gold standard from adoption. If you go almost anywhere in the world outside of the United States and maybe some of the more established countries in Europe, you will not really see USDC. You will see USDT. It is the asset that has been adopted. And so the spreads on ramps, the spreads on bridging, the spreads on any FX modules and things, are generally going to be anywhere between, in a lot of cases, it's literally 50 to 150 bips or like 0.5% to 1.5% better on USDT than USDC. If you're trying to go off ramp USDC in like Vietnam or like Japan or any of these countries, you will generally see a more expensive cost for doing it direct from USDC. Whereas if you go USDC to USDT first, it is usually cheaper because they have better reserves in USDT. So why is this relevant? And like I said, this gets like very macro. So I'm probably going to butcher a couple things here, but very high level, the US dollar is a world reserve currency. Like countries hold the dollar, they use the dollar to hedge and make decisions on their own monetary policy, right? There's like a whole macro thing. Yeah. You didn't know this? You live in a country where they left and are trying to devalue the US dollar. That's like a whole thing happening. But anyways, this happens every day in every currency. Like all the different countries, most of the countries with very large economies hold dollars and treasuries of other countries. And it's a nonstop rebalancing act, trying to make either their dollar stronger or weaker, depending on what they're trying to do. Like right now, people here believe that our government is attempting to devalue the dollar because it has proven historically to oftentimes make the market go up. Again, that's more politics than anything. But long story short, why do you hold an asset? Why do you make an asset liquid or valuable? Right now, the name of the game, outside of distribution from Tether, everyone else underneath Tether has been chasing interest and yield. That's been like the name of the game for the last 6 months. Everyone's issuing their own stable coin because they want to make the interest from the short-term treasury bills that the US government guarantees, right? Those are backed by the full strength and credit of the United States government. So people want those assets because essentially if you're willing to sit on that asset for 4 weeks, you're guaranteed to make that small amount. You keep rolling those over, blah, 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 you make money. Now, what's interesting here is you have a lot of regulation coming out as well. But more broadly, if you do look macro, what gets really interesting is most people don't know there is a JPY stablecoin. Most people don't know there's like 2 or 3 Brazilian dollar stablecoins. Most people don't know there was recently I want to say an Australian dollar stablecoin that got issued. There's a whole bunch of them that are getting issued and launched by different companies, but most people don't know this because most people don't want to hold these. I won't speak for entire countries, but I've heard this is more hearsay. I've heard from a lot of people secondhand that there's a lot of people in countries in like the APAC region where people will get paid in their local currency and they will immediately turn around and go and buy USDT and they will sit in USDT because of the fact that it is a hedge against their local currency. And USDT is the cheapest to get. And so what this means is people are not buying their local currency on chain to use it. They're buying USDT to sit in USDT or whatever the local stablecoin is. And so I think a lot of these decisions really impact distribution. And ultimately to what you guys are saying, I think what x402 is actually going to help adoption wise is making it easier for people to get paid in a currency that's relevant to them. Because at a stage, when you are converting between currencies, unless you're going between the top, 15 to 18, 20 currencies, the spreads become relatively significant. Like if you're going between the US dollar and the euro, it's pretty de minimis. Like good traders can potentially find value there, but it's less about making money on those and more about taking positions on the global economy. When you're moving between smaller country currencies, there's actually bigger spread and risk involved because the countries are less liquid, their economies aren't as big, stuff like that. And so when you start to think about local currencies for payments, it's really interesting because it's a question of why would people adopt these? I think to your guys' point, if it's more backed within like, hey, an actual merchant or human being is going to get paid, it starts to sound more realistic to see more countries bringing their stablecoins on chain and making them a part of people's daily lives because it actually makes them have more availability to these services. Ramble done. I apologize. I know that was really long.
What happens when we start getting banks that like start opening up their own exchange and things like that, and then their reserve currency is going to be in like the crypto banks' reserve currency is going to have to be the local currency?
So that is a big, bold question. I have thoughts, but I'm going to hand it over to our guests first if they have any thoughts they want to share, because I've been speaking for way too long.
Yeah, sure. I want to chime in into the comments you have on the economies of stable coins in different countries around the world. I can say I'm Panamanian. I born here, and Panama is one of the countries that has the dollar as the official um, currency in the whole country. So it has been since the creation of Panama has been very stable in terms of financially wise. But at the same time, in terms of crypto, we see here in Panama that is more adopted the USDT than the USDC. For example, I had a few payments from clients in USDC, and if I want to offer them here, I need to convert, like necessarily, I need to convert to USDT to be able to have it on ramp here in Panama. Um, so that's one of the first things, and it's more cheap, as you said. But we had an idea, like in terms of, because we have been iterating different scenarios in blockchain and different sector of business. I can say that I study finance a little bit, but my major is on computer science. But I have finance knowledge, and I can say that is the scenario of having a local currency back on crypto, could be backed with USDT as well. Um, but that's a great idea for local economies, because um, the inflation will be lower than have this less developed countries trying to buy this high developed country currencies. For example, we can say in Argentina they have the Argentina peso, and that currency is very devalued right now, and they had different kind of dollars that they sell in the country. And this is it's pretty wild there. And I have friends of mine that has this issue when they want to off ramp their crypto. They need to do different kind of strategies to have it uh, most value wise. So yeah, it's a scenario that we have to think of, and we have iterate in terms of, like, we have like more than 6 months building all day. So we have like different ideas of how to make this possible. But uh, right now, yeah, we're focusing to make HTTP payer um, as on a standard protocol, and then in the future we have plans to help to make that local currency model happen here in Latin America and other countries that are developed countries, we can say.
Yeah, and I think just to chime in really quickly, another facet of this and of X402 is going to be the off ramping. We have the payments. You can have it sent to your address associated to your backend script or your agent. But then there's also that step of then trying to offload the stable coins or whichever crypto in the lowest fees possible, because off ramps they try to charge as high fees, relatively speaking. So that's also another vertical, another opportunity that we also are keeping in mind, just to make X402 overall easier and as well as accessibly globally.
Definitely. That's an area where I've talked with a lot of people that are doing more pure on-chain payments in finance, and I think we're going to see a crossover between these two kind of groups, because I think there's a lot of people that have thankfully solved that, and there's a lot of people focusing on like very specific rails, right? Like there's companies who are focused on I'm going to be the best at the US dollar to Brazilian dollar rail, or the best from the US dollar to JPY, or euro to the dirham, or whatever it may be. And so I think when you start to see these people focusing on very specific corridors of money movement, it allows things to become more efficient. And then ultimately, products like your guys can ideally, we almost will see like I almost feel like we're going to see facilitators become the equivalent of like almost like a merchant on record, kind of like a Stripe is, for better or for worse. And I think that's I don't know what that means from a compliance perspective, but I think it makes sense from I can go and register with the merchant on record. The merchant on record is the one who's actually in charge of the compliance and legal. They may take a small fee out of my earnings, but ultimately they're going to handle all of the flows, and then they can just settle back into either a bank account, a neobank, different stable coins, whatever it may be. And so I do agree. I think that's something that's going to become a big part of why people actually want to use this. And then I think, Ben, to your question more so on how does all of this get impacted with banks getting more involved? I think that's going to be something where, we're talking about the world's money, right? And the one thing that everyone wants more of and never has enough of is money. And so I think we're going to see a lot of probably volatile back and forth. I mean, we're already seeing it with, the war on stablecoin issuers and yield, right? There's, banks are fighting back against stablecoin issuers being able to trickle down yield in compliant ways to other companies and all that good stuff. Because they think it's, banks make most of their money by having people lock up funds and lending that money out. That's how they make it. Well, not most of the money. That's how they make a significant amount of money. That's where the money printer gets to get turned on, right? Is they're fractionalized. At least the U.S. banking system is what's known as a fractionalized reserve system. So they don't need to have 100% collateral. They get to use the collateral to create new money licensed by the federal treasury. And that is basically how more money gets created, and banks want more money so they can create more money.
Also known as fraud.
Well, this is how it's been working for I want to say 100 and
it don't mean it ain't fraud, brother.
I mean, again, I think this is where my new stance on all of these topics, finance, privacy, all this is it's kind of status quo for society. We have all become okay with these things because we don't really have a choice. And yes, are there things that could be improved? For sure. But people love the fact that their crypto goes up, their stocks go up, the market goes up, all this stuff. I have news for you. Look at when the money printers turned on in the US and look at when the US stock market started going crazy. There is definitely a correlation between the two. So if you want growth, you got to print money because spending money makes you money. And that is just functionally a proven reality all the way up to the top at the government level. And I think most people would rather have the money printer on and earn money on their value, whether they actually make money or not. Anyways, kind of bringing that full circle, I do believe ultimately we will see banks get way more involved. And I think it's going to be ideally for me, my ideal vision is that banks can custody stablecoins, any stablecoin. I recently went to Europe, and when I came back, I had I want to say $210 in euros, and my bank charged me 8% to convert back. It was ridiculous. Big bank in the US, they charged me 8%. It took them 72 pieces of paper. I had to sign 5 things to deposit $210 of euros. It was so ridiculous.
Yeah, there's something to do with there's a legality thing, isn't it? You're supposed to hold money more than 30 days if you're doing currency trading or something.
It's ridiculous is what it is. As a consumer, I'm not saying the rules and regulations are bad. I don't know what they are, but the process, the UX for consumer is terrible. And so in an ideal world, right? If I'm going to go back to Europe soon, I'd rather just take the cash and say, hey, please put these in euros in my bank account. And now my bank account shows USD and it shows euros. And then if I want to spend that money, I can withdraw it either in cash, I can withdraw it to Euro C, or, I think it's US EUR-T or something from Tether. I can withdraw it to whatever European stable coin that I want. That is ideally for me, the win-win for the banks getting involved is my money is actually fully digital and it's as liquid as can be. Now, do I bank accounts have checking and savings, there's different lockups, all this different stuff. I think there is bifurcation that will still be there, but I think ultimately that is where, again, bringing that back to X402, I'm a merchant. I've got a bank account. I want to get paid. I want x402 because it makes my life really easy to get paid in anything. Okay, here you go. It just all drips back to my bank account. My bank supports, stable coins. I think the big banks that adopt that first are going to go absolutely crazy with asset under management, because right now there is a lot of what's the word where you have everything relying on one bank or one entity in a chain. Systemic risk. There's systemic risk because if I'm not mistaken, it's Lead Bank is the one who's backing all the stablecoin issuers and like all that stuff. If I read correctly, I think it was Lead Bank. They're like the primary around a lot of this. And so I think the sooner we get some other big banks involved, the better it will be for the strength of our industry, and get that adoption that we're all really craving, and then ultimately push forward, agentic payments and agentic finance and all that good stuff. So,
yeah. Well, been a very, very interesting, spoke a lot, learned a lot, been enjoyable, I think we're definitely moving towards a more connected future. It's interesting. It's almost a more connected yet potentially decentralized future, which is nice. To our lovely guests, anything further before we close things out?
Sure. I want to hop in and say that I appreciate this space as well. So it was very interesting talk that we had today, and I want this happen very often. we have been building for the last 6 months, so right now we want to empower and share with you all everything that we already making.
Just to add on that, we are looking for beta testers looking to onboard some x402 enabled endpoints, or even if it's just a regular endpoint, you're looking into x402. We want to be able to help guide that process, onboard people into x402. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Excited to explore having you guys deploy on Scale. I definitely think we have a lot of developers that will be interested in having their services on you guys. So the sooner we can make that happen, the sooner we can bring you, a pretty large community. So, but yeah, very grateful. I know we asked you to join last minute, so thank you to both of you for taking the time. Congrats on your recent beta launch, and I'm super hyped to test it. So I'll be chatting with you guys in Telegram very shortly.
Awesome.
Incredible. Thank you guys for hanging out, and thank you to everybody for tuning in. We'll see you again next week. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.